Well, hello, that's me again. Today is February 26th. It's happy Monday to everybody, but it's not really happy. I want to start with a very tragic news. Those who believe in God say prayers for this guy. The name of the guy is Aaron Bushnell, 25. He today passed away after setting himself a self-immolation in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. He shouted, "I will no longer be complicit in genocide." His last words were, "Free Palestine." And yes, may this martyr rest in peace. America produced today for first martyr for the people of Gaza, for Palestinians who are being genocided by Israel, and with the United States being completely complicit in what is happening down there, which is, of course, genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes, crimes against humanity, whatever you call it. And meanwhile, with Israeli Defense Force having its actually ass handed to it by the people of Hamas. But of course, the main issue here is the tragedy of civilians which is happening there, which is absolutely heartbreaking. It is impossible to watch what is happening and what is being done to civilian population of Palestine. And what can I say? America just, obviously they will be later finding some, mental issues with this guy or something like this, this nature. But the truth is, this is we got the kind of peek into the consciousness of American people, which are still, this consciousness is still alive. It is out there. We know this. Something is boiling under the surface of the American establishment and media, which are completely subverted by Israel and support basically genocide. But that's what they do. This is how they operate, especially US media. Well, guess what? Today in the United States, it claimed the life of the able airman Aaron Bushnell. And what can I say? Yeah, say a prayer for this guy. What sad, really tragic. Now, to the other news, which are important, and as you might remember, those guys have been noticed 2 days ago around Avdiivka. And the reason they have been noticed around Avdiivka is very simple, because Russia continues to advance along the several axes there, and just to do something about this advance, to halt it somehow, the last trump card, so to speak, came into play. And as was reported by RT yesterday, first Abrams tanks sighted near Avdiivka. Local officials told about this, and Ukraine received 31 of the US-made vehicles, which have since been conspicuously absent from the battlefield several months ago. Moscow forces have for the first time spotted US-supplied M1 Abrams main tank in the Donbass front. And as was correctly noticed, they have been already delivered to Ukraine sometime in 2023. Since then, however, the tanks have been notably absent from the battlefield, with some Western experts suggesting that Kyiv might be holding them in reserve for a potential major offensive, or may have decided that the Abrams would not be effective in winter conditions against fortified Russian defense. No, I can tell you why they have been held back. Abrams is no better than Leopard, and in fact it's no better than T-90M. Another matter that Abrams, as any Western or NATO equipment, it's a legacy weapon system. It is still stuck in 1990s. Well, guess what? It's now have the confirmation. we have the first confirmed Abrams, which was destroyed, and Moscow troops have destroyed the first US-made M1 Abrams main battle tank supplied to Kiev forces amid the Ukraine conflict. The tank was reportedly hit near the village of Berdichi, located to the northwest of Avdiivka, a key Donbas town recently liberated by Russian forces. And here's the explanation. They throw the M1s, thinking that they are somehow magical weapons, which they are not, and already one of them have been burned. The other one barely escaped, but Russians already identified 7 of them in the area, and you might expect now that all of them will be hunted down and will be destroyed. And that goes kind of adds to the issue of the United States weaponry suffering one humiliating defeat after another, be that as some of Russian military professionals spoke yesterday, in number, which was reported by a number of the major news reports, that yeah, we can defeat a Patriot. If we find it, it's gone. It doesn't really matter what they throw, what United States throws there. This is not only the operational concepts which are outdated, these are weapon systems which are outdated, and they of course are no match for the weapons such as Lancet, loitering munitions, or any other drones, or even RPGs. Burn them. And so they will try probably to salvage this tank, which obviously burned inside completely. So I don't know if they need the hull and they need somehow to use this metal for something else. I don't know, they might try it. But if not that, considering the fact that Russian forces are advancing, Russians most likely will get it and tow it back to Moscow to demonstrate it to public about how effective, quote unquote, NATO weapons are. And just not to be kind of, shaking the air here, here's the confirmation of that. Yesterday, governor of Zaporizhia region, Russian troops entered Rabotina. Russian troops have entered the village of Rabotina, which until recently served as the main symbol of Ukraine's summer counteroffensive. In Zaporizhia Oblast, Governor Yevgeny Balitsky said. Balitsky noted that Ukrainian troops had to pay an incommensurable price for this piece of crippled land, and the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces amounted to thousands of human lives and a huge amount of equipment. As it turned out, it was all in vain. Well, we of course know that Mr. Zelensky came on record. Went on record actually, and he stated that so far Ukraine lost only 31,000 people. So sure, and aliens from planet Zoltar supply him with the enormous amount of cocaine, which obviously makes him make those ridiculous statements, which were ridiculed even in the U.S. media. And guess what? So the guy obviously lives in the alternative reality, and as pretty much most of the Kiev regime does, and this is not the worst part of it, so, and if that hasn't been enough in terms of the destroying the pretty much the whatever the remaining reputation of the NATO whole fighting doctrines and technology, things are really getting heated up a little bit in Europe. And when you have Poles, mind you, Poles, many of them, they don't like Russians, okay? When you have even Polish farmers coming up with this, and as you can see yourself, what he says, that Putin will come and will figure out, he will deal with with Ukraine and Brussels, and he carries the Soviet flag. The Polish farmers, just because they do not want, obviously, Ukrainian grain. And as the proof of this, here's the horrifying picture, actually. These are rail cars with the Ukrainian grain, and all this Ukrainian grain have been thrown out of those cars on the ground. And yeah, this is what Polish farmers don't like, which I totally understand them, because Ukrainian grain is cheap, not that it's probably better quality, but it's cheap, and obviously it kills the farming in Poland. And not only in Poland, you already know what is happening in Germany, you already know what is happening in France, where French farmers accuse Mr. Macron of doing nothing and sending money to Ukraine. But it doesn't matter what they do now, whatever Victoria Nuland, who is militarily illiterate as all of them, neocons, including the military so-called professionals who serve them, they are militarily incompetent people, and they still kind of, try to exercise some illusions. And of course, they have media which spin it for them something like that Russia allegedly made the peace gesture and, offer of negotiations. Obviously, it's a complete lie, because Russia never did anything like this. What Russians and Russian major politicians, starting from Mr. President Vladimir Putin to Mr. Lavrov to Mr. Medvedev, state constantly is that Russia is open for negotiations. This is not offering negotiations. It's just telling them that, when you're ready, come in and we'll talk. Basically, the talk will be reduced to Russia dictating the options, so to speak, or conditions for surrender, and that's about it. But it's difficult to explain for the Ivy League humanities dumbed down graduate, which most of the American elites are, that things are not decided in just diplomatic sphere. First, United States doesn't have diplomacy as such anymore as statecraft, because it was utterly corrupted by the neocons and all those, psycho people who, they try to promote this ridiculous agenda. And basically, United States at this stage doesn't have diplomacy as such. But it's difficult to explain to them that only real things matter in life. And for example, when you fight a war, it's what happens on the battlefield which really matters, and which defines actually how to, conduct your diplomatic activity. And quoting Mr. Deng Xiaoping, who how to put it, rephrased the famous Clausewitzian dictum that war is the extension of the policy by other means. He stated that diplomacy is the extension of the war by peaceful means, which is correct. And you know what? NATO doesn't have anything to, be proud of on the battlefield, especially in the last half a year. And so we go and, we go to the liberal, uber whatever, thing, which is of course the salon. This is they pretend that they're intellectuals. There are no liberal intellectuals in the United States. All those intellectual elites from the coastal cities are pretty much stupid. But look at this. So they say, like yesterday, after 2 grueling years of bloodshed, it's time for peace in Ukraine. U.S. policy drove a year of pointless, bloody stalemate, leaving Ukraine in dire peril. None of it had to happen. Well, first, there's no stalemate, and they are repeating those stupid talking points. Whoever this Medea Benjamini and Nicholas Davis are, they obviously have no clue what they're writing about. But, guess what? They talk about the Avdiivka, and they talk about how situated only 10 miles from Donetsk city, Avdiivka gave Ukrainian government forces a base from which the artillery bombarded Donetsk for 10 years. And yes, obviously it's very important that they acknowledge those things. But then they continue to write and as if there was some offer. In March 2022, however, they point out, and I applaud them for that, because they begin to openly speak about it. Russian and Ukrainian officials met in Turkey and negotiated a peace agreement that should have ended the war. Under that agreement, Ukraine would become a neutral country between East and West on the model of Austria or Switzerland, giving it up of controversial ambition for NATO membership. Territorial questions of Crimea and self-declared republics of Donetsk and Lugansk would be resolved peacefully based on self-determination for the people of these regions. But then the US and UK intervened to persuade Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to abandon the neutrality agreement in favor of a long war aimed at driving Russia out of Ukraine. The US sabotage of peace talks should come as no surprise. So much of American foreign policy follows what should now be an easily recognizable and predictable pattern. in which our leaders systematically lie to us about their decisions and actions in crisis situations. Wow. And for that, I applaud Salon, because here they produced a very important piece, and they produced a very important statement, which is actually quite true, and when you listen to this and read it, it's just like, something happening. Something is really just changing, even among the what would be called the uber left wing, which is not really a left wing, but they call it a left wing in the United States, and which is, of course, at the service of the Democratic Party. And Salon is they are big honchos in this, so to speak, strata of the Democratic Party voters. So that is interesting, definitely, and it is really worth noting. And then, of course, we have this situation that Mr. Trump crushes last Republican rival. Obviously, Nikki Haley is not Republican. She is a neocon. She's very stupid. She has a degree in accounting, which is a respectable degree. You need to have, it's very important. But how this bimbo actually ended, never mind that it was under Mr. Trump as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, is the whole mystery behind it. But actually, she was trashed in her own home state of South Carolina. And Donald Trump has won the South Carolina Republican primary, comfortably defeating the state's former governor. What is most important, many Democrats actually went and voted there, and guess what? They voted for, which is called Rhino, a Republican in name only, Nikki Haley, because she is a, psycho, four-wheel drive, warmongering bitch. That's what it is. And guess what? This is what brings us to the very important issue, which number of people begin to really point out, that we need to have in mind that even when she had this primarily female voters voting for her, she still lost by a landslide. But there is very fewer fanatics which can, surpass average white liberal semi-educated woman. And this is, I specifically point out to you who they are. The urban humanities dumbed down, female voters. They are ready to vote for whatever, even for the simple fact that Nikki Haley doesn't have any understanding of geopolitics. She was a merely figurehead in the United Nations. She is no diplomat. She has no military education. She doesn't understand what applied geopolitics is. And the only thing she was good at is to running the bookkeeping for waste management plant, which is still very important, make no mistake, but that's her level. And she is obviously the candidate of the deep state neocon lobby. And guess what? She is being voted by women, those, voter women, white, liberal, urban voters who vote for her on only a single premise, or for only one reason, because she is a woman and she's against Trump. Well, you may say that it's two reasons, but it's actually one wrapped into another. So it's a single reason. They don't care about the program. They don't care that she advocates for essentially continuing genocide anywhere. She is on the service of Israel. She is on the service of AIPAC. And she's warmonger. She's genocidal maniac. And yet, she still finds the voters in the United States, which is absolutely atrocious, but it is what it is. Nothing could be changed about it. And she stays in, despite humiliation upon humiliation upon humiliation, losing state after state after state in primaries, she stays in the run, so to speak, for a simple reason. There was a lot of money invested in her by the deep state, by neocons, by Israeli forsters, and she needs to work them. Obviously, she is not electable material. She is simply illiterate, ignorant bimbo. But guess what? They still want her in the race because obviously they are terrified by the possibility of Trump winning the race. Not that I like Trump, I don't, but you know what? What are the alternatives? That's the whole point. And that brings us also to the other very important revelation, if you wish, or epiphany. We have Craig Murray, he's a former ambassador. He's a British diplomat of the old formation when Britain still had diplomats, and it still had people of their consciousness and integrity, such as, of course, Mr. Alistair Crook. Or here we have Mr. Craig Murray. He writes 2 days ago. Well, it's actually wrote it actually earlier than that, but he writes it, and it was published by Consortium News 2 days ago. Craig Murray writes, "Mea culpa in Ukraine. My belief in some kind of inherent decency in the Western political establishment was naive. Absolutely, so was mine. Another matter that I got rid of this naivety already by the time Mr. Trump won his term and started to implement his so-called foreign policy, which was a complete destruction of Russian-American relations and supporting Ukraine." There you go. So I absolutely agree with Mr. Murray that, yeah, it is naive. They do not work for the American people. They love to sell slogans about this, but they don't. And so here what Craig Murray writes. The genocide in Gaza, or more precisely the major NATO powers' active and practical support for the genocide in Gaza, has forced me to re-evaluate my views on Ukraine in a manner more sympathetic to the Russian narrative. In particular, I was complacent in my dismissive attitude to the argument that the Western powers would back ethnic cleansing and massacre in Donbass by forces, including some motivated by Nazi ideology. I have news to Mr. Murray. The Western elites would love Russians dead, all of them. Men, women, children, they are genocidal. Russia and Russians as the ethnic people and as the nation of many ethnicities and as the purveyors of the Russian orthodoxy, they are present and clear danger to Washington establishment. So if they kill children, women, they don't care. They applaud it. So then this is their, well, it's not naivete anymore. It's just the fact of life. And he says that, yeah, I agree with him from formal point of view, that this doesn't mean that I was wrong to call the Russian invasion of Ukrainian state illegal. I'm afraid it was. You see, the law is the law. It has only a tenuous connection to either morality or justice. A thing can be justified and morally right, but still illegal. Well, what can I say? For Russia, it was justified and morally right, and Russians don't care about legality anymore, because you cannot play legality games with the combined West. And he's talking about, I am however content that the right to protect doctrine has not become accepted in international law because it is in general application neo-imperialist. Well, yes, to some degree it is. And he talks about it. It was developed by the Blair government, initially to justify NATO bombing of Serbia and the British reoccupation of Sierra Leone, and was used by Hillary Clinton to justify the destruction of Libya on the basis of lies about an imminent massacre in Benghazi. We should be wary of the doctrine. I completely agree with him. But then again, as Mr. Svechin, he stated, each war has its own character. It is unique in its own way. And you cannot just use the broad brush to generalize about those wars, because they all differ in the geographic, cultural, and economic and other senses. So, and for example, when you talk about the United States, most of its wars are of the imperial conquest, and nothing could be done about it. And then, of course, as if to prove it, we have, though, some second thoughts, which is very interesting, from none other than Jake Sullivan, who it's so funny. He justifies the lack of F-16s by the fact that Ukraine doesn't have enough trained F-16 pilots. White House: the U.S.-made fighter planes would not have been a game changer for Kyiv's doomed counteroffensive. A top advisor says it. It means the top advisor being a national security advisor, Mr. Jake Sullivan. If you look at sum total of what the United States provided to Ukraine in this fight, it is an incredible quantity of material delivered at speed and scale, outpacing the expectations. In some sense, he is right. I mean, basically Ukraine is the best proxy combined West ever had, before it had the proxy in the face of Mr. Hitler and the Third Reich, pardon me. But the point is, why would you risk the remnants of your reputation? Because F-16s will be also hunted down and destroyed in the air or on the ground. So there you go. It's all about American military, industrial, congressional media complex in terms of making money in the end. And you cannot make money when what you're selling is not performing really well, to put it mildly. Like, as I already stated, you can look it up. The Javelin's effectiveness was something around 20%. It's a disaster. And look at Patriots, look now at Abrams, they will be burning. So, and you don't want to lose reputation like this. You're being humiliated literally on the battlefield. And it's not just the fact that your technology is being humiliated. Operational concepts suck. They are not up to date. They are based on some wet dreaming and alternative reality. And there you go. We all have the proof of that. But if that hasn't been enough, we also have the British, trying to pretend that they really matter, and that they really know things, and that they can, go toe to toe with Russia. Sure. We have now this very famous, actually, London radio station. It is a major LBC News. And the former MI6 dude evidently provides his thought, which proved to us that inbreeding is not good for your elites. And this is what actually happens to British elites. And he says that Vladimir Putin has Parkinson's and there is something fundamentally wrong with him. Ex-MI6 boss tells LBC 3 days ago. Sir Richard Derloff, who ran British spy agency between 1999 and 2004, as Putin first became leader of Russia, told LBC his contacts believed the autocrat's illness could be behind his paranoia. No, it's the inbreeding with the Sir Richard Derloff, which actually completely make him stupid, and he doesn't have any contacts in Moscow which are reliable or worthy of, I don't know, a single shilling, if you wish, because these are the has-beens who are still live in the old glory days of, British Empire. They still believe that they matter somehow. Those contacts he has are contacts from the basically tabloid, yellow level, all kinds of media whores in Russia who work for all kinds of NGOs. That's only contacts he can have. So they're gonna sell him all kinds of crap, and he doesn't have enough brains to actually do what any normal, respectable, and self-respecting intelligence chief would do to assess the veracity and validity of the information he collects. The guy is a complete moron, and as most in the British elites, they are. Look at them. There's one idiot after another, and that's the kind of the elites they produce. As I already stated, neither Oxford nor Sandhurst could be seriously taken as either humanities or military educational institutions. So you have this type of people who are butt-hurting and they're selling all kind of crap. So, and if that hasn't been enough, now look how they report. This is British, a major radio station. Look what whatever the name of this kid is, Alan Zichinski. He talks about that Russian jets simulate bombing raids on Britain as RAF faces monthly scramble to defend UK airspace. And look what he writes. RAF, Royal Air Force jets have been scrambling to respond to Russian military aircraft in British airspace at least 35 times in the last 5 years. LBC can reveal. That tells you what British media are. Russian never aircraft, I'm talking about any kind of aircraft, violated British airspace. It's just complete fantasy, because violating of British airspace would require a real serious military response from British, up to including shooting down those alleged Russian military aircraft which violated British airspace. Evidently, those people, being all those fake degrees in journalism and political science, they do not understand that there is a huge difference between the airspace, which is the national airspace space, which is defined depending on the United Nations laws as the vertical plane which follows their international borders, and they do not understand that there is an air defense zone, and air defense zone can be up to 200 kilometers away from the borders of such state as Russia or Great Britain or Japan or China. But those people do not know even this simple distinction, and they write garbage. And can you imagine there are, British hoi polloi reading this, that, oh my God, Russians, just interfering into our airspace. Russians do not do such thing. Russia respects borders. Any borders of the countries, established countries such as Great Britain, such as United States, China, what have you. But yeah, these are the people who run the United Kingdom. And as a result, they all have their, paranoia and sheer idiocy as the indication of a complete decay of the Western societies. And this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, support me, please, on Patreon, buy me a coffee or two. And I will appreciate this. So, and this is it for today, guys. Have a nice rest of your week. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.